April 20th, 2025 will be a pivotal date when an astrological phenomenon reaches its peak and will have a profound impact on the lives of many. The formation of the Grand Cross, involving 4 planets at once, promises to be a time of significant change and challenge for all zodiac signs. Scorpios, accustomed to control and influence from the shadows, will find themselves in the very epicenter of events. It will no longer be possible to stay on the sidelines and watch. There comes a time when you need to take control. Either the representatives of this zodiac sign direct the course of events, or the Grand Cross will destroy everything that has been created over the years. Pluto will expose hidden illusions, forcing you to get rid of everything outdated and unnecessary. Jupiter will destroy the old worldview, opening the way to new opportunities and expanding influence. Mars will provoke, but at the same time will give strength and will to act to those who are ready to give up the chaos in their lives. The Moon will cause emotional instability, but will help open the subconscious mind to let go of fears and embrace love. Each of these planets is not an enemy, but a powerful tool. The main question is whether Scorpios will be able to use their power, or will the planets exploit the weaknesses of the representatives of this sign. The secret will be revealed, and it can be painful. Pluto will be the trigger. On April 20th, the planet will interact with the Grand Cross, setting off a chain reaction that will affect each Scorpio's personal stability system. The influence is through the 4th house of the horoscope, a sphere that encompasses the basics of life, home, family ties, emotional stability, and the deep roots that form the foundation of the worldview. The impact comes not from the outside, but from within the individual. First of all, vulnerabilities are discovered in those areas where previously one preferred not to notice problems. Close people who have been trusted unconditionally begin to show themselves in new ways, not necessarily hostile, but distant enough to cause a sense of loss of control. Long-term relationships based on mutual commitment reveal the true balance of power, who was leading and who was merely following the leader. It becomes obvious who was a reliable support and who was a ballast on the path of life. The growing tension leaves no room for illusions and self-deception. Financial issues related to real estate, family investments, inheritance or partnership agreements expose weaknesses. Assets based on fiduciary relationships may give rise to legal proceedings. Schemes of doing business through front men reveal hidden risks. Loans to relatives and friends and investments in their projects turn into problems that need to be addressed immediately. Do not look for excuses for their blunders in the coincidence of circumstances. Any problem that comes to the surface is a consequence of previous concessions, indecision and arrogant expectation that everything will work itself out. Alas, the miracle did not happen. Pluto is not to be blamed for the punishment of the heavens, but only brings to light that which has been held on the shaky ground of fear, and puts before the need for radical reorganization. The payback for self-deception can be prohibitive. By clinging to the illusion of stability where coercion is at the heart of everything, one risks losing one's vitality. However, recognizing one's own weaknesses opens the way to finding a new point of support. One does not fall, but only fixes what has fallen into disrepair. There is a chance to prepare the ground for the future, which will be built not on fear of loss, but on strong connections, clear decisions and sober calculation. 3 common misconceptions are crumbling right before our eyes. 1. I'm in control. Alas, this is not true. Anything that does not have a clear form, is not fixed legally and is not formalized in the form of an understandable structure is doomed to destruction. The tools of manipulation, intimidation and backstage agreements lose their power. 2. It is necessary to preserve at all costs what has been created over the years. When there is no meaning, resources are exhausted, there is no reciprocity and no perspective, further continuation loses all meaning. It is no longer a valuable asset, but rather a burdensome ballast, pulling back. A common opinion is that leaving is a defeat, but in reality it may be the only way to escape from the vicious circle, where a person cuts off his own oxygen. If the situation is inexorably dragging you to the bottom, quitting is not a sign of weakness, but a strategic choice. Scorpio does not need ostentatious strength, he needs to take a strong position, and life circumstances will show him the right path, if he does not cling to the past. The so-called Big Cross symbolizes the inability to soberly assess the situation and make a balanced decision. It is a test of readiness to take responsibility and abandon illusions. Those who neglect cautionary signs risk being at a loss, without control over the situation, without reliable support and without the necessary resources. But Scorpio can avoid this fate if it acts decisively and without delay. This is a kind of unarmed combat, where the inner faith in yourself becomes the main trump card. Jupiter, passing through the Grand Cross, strengthens its influence and at the same time experiences inner self-confidence. Between April 21st and April 22nd, tensions will peak. Jupiter squares and pressures through the 9th house of the Scorpio horoscope, which is responsible for beliefs, outlook, life principles, and authority. Everything that previously seemed to be an immutable truth can crumble overnight. If Scorpio is a teacher, lawyer, mentor, esotericist, carrier of knowledge or a student who depends on systematized information, the blow will have to the very foundation of his activity. In today's world, where change is rapid, former benchmarks and established methods are losing their relevance. Leaders whose opinions once seemed immutable no longer wield the same influence. The words of those who were trusted unconditionally begin to cause internal dissonance. Life confronts us with the realization that other people's truths no longer fit the requirements of the time, they are outdated and hold back further development. At such times there can be a sense of desolation and loss of authority, as if an important pillar has collapsed. However, this is precisely the turning point. It is not a sign of weakness or loss of self, but rather a release from the shackles of other people's beliefs and imposed concepts. For those who have power, influence or aspire to new heights, it is clear that the world requires a completely different way of thinking. It is impossible to continue to operate according to outdated instructions, because the playing field has changed dramatically. The old system of knowledge, which once brought results, is no longer effective. Stubborn clinging to the old leads to imminent collapse. One of the psychological traps is the desire to cling to the familiar environment, formed on the basis of outdated principles. Colleagues, partners, and associates may discourage change by trying to maintain the same old way of doing things and keep you in the same old role. However, it's worth recognizing that their beliefs may backfire on you. Jupiter's transit through the 9th house pushes you to go beyond the familiar, not in the physical sense, but at the level of thinking. It is not just about expanding the comfort zone, but about its complete destruction. If a person gets rid of outdated ideas and is not afraid to disappoint those who no longer contribute to his development, there is a significant turning point. It is here that the key advantage of Scorpio is manifested, the ability to deeply rethink the worldview without resorting to external support. Scorpios do not need the approval of the crowd or loud applause. The slightest sign is enough for them to make a radical turn. If Scorpio feels it's time to move in a new direction, and Jupiter sends the appropriate signal, whether it's a sudden revelation, a life-changing encounter, an inspiring book, a tempting offer, or a significant event, the focus of attention shifts dramatically. Suddenly a clear path opens up. It becomes clear that all the previous destruction is not a loss, but a clearing of space for something greater. The transit of Jupiter through the 10th house gives a new mission, not a consolation or compensation, but a high goal that Scorpio has long been ready for, but has been hesitant to embark on. New horizons open up, entering the international arena, launching an ambitious project, stepping into the role of a mentor, or mastering knowledge that can change everything. Without too much haste, let's look at the big picture. Jupiter also influences the 3rd house of the horoscope. If a person is actively involved in sharing information, whether it's blogging, creating content, or consulting, you should expect an influx of new audiences. There will be people who are ready to perceive information on a different level, as the individual will stop repeating other people's thoughts and start expressing their own. It is important to remember that Jupiter symbolizes the expansion of horizons, not loss. However, in order to fully activate its energy, it is necessary to get rid of outdated connections, futile ideas, and borrowed meanings. There is a liberation from concepts that have lost their relevance, and there is an opportunity to reach a new level of reality, where the opinion of others is no longer a determining factor. A person begins to act as an independent person, carrying value, rather than as a cog in the system. We should pay special attention to the fact that Mars is going into ultimatum mode, revealing those who are actually hostile. And there may be more of them than previously thought. From the 23rd, Mars intensifies tensions to the extreme, forming a grand cross through the 8th house, which is responsible for crises, loss, destruction, psychological attacks, alien resources, and outmoded life forms. In such a situation, diplomacy takes a back seat as issues of survival and power struggles come to the fore. There is a shedding of masks in the surrounding world, and this applies not only to other people, but also to the observer himself. One can feel the growing pressure exerted simultaneously from several directions. Despite the apparent stability, the inner tension is steadily increasing. This is not a manifestation of paranoia, but rather an awakening of natural sensitivity to the hidden motives and true nature of others. There is likely to be a person in the inner circle who is acting against the observer, skillfully avoiding open confrontation. His tactics include manipulation, distracting conversations, covert sabotage of decisions and attempts to sow doubts about his own competence. The astrological influence of Mars indicates that it is not a lone individual acting against the observer, but an entire system united by common goals. Attacks are aimed at undermining reputation, especially if the observer's professional activity is connected with spheres requiring strict confidentiality, such as finance, psychology, esotericism, strategic planning, or business defense. People to whom the observer has shown loyalty use the information obtained from him to their own advantage, turning it against him. Framing is not done directly, but through subtle manipulation such as understatement, misrepresentation, and leaking information at the most inopportune moment. The influence of Mars awakens in the observer the capacity for breakthrough thinking and instincts that cause apprehension even in those close to him. It is not a question of aggression, but of awakening the predatory instinct. Scorpio has a unique ability to instantly recognize lies, identify provocations, and detect vulnerabilities in others. The main goal is to find the exact point to strike to restore the broken balance of power. In moments of tension, the true faces of those whom Scorpio considered allies are revealed. Some do not stand the test, refusing shared responsibility or leaving the game, shifting the entire burden on his shoulders. Others prefer to pretend nothing is happening. For Scorpio, however, this is not a loss, but a valuable opportunity to clean up his environment. Betrayal does not call for immediate revenge. Mars is not calling for retribution, but for an end to protecting those who don't deserve it. The destruction that is going on around you is the result of Scorpio's efforts to keep from falling what should have collapsed long ago. It is the result of compromises, silence, and decisions made in the past. The shocking truth is that the enemies were on the inside. More specifically, in Scorpio's acceptance of toxic relationships, his loyalty to those who were no longer partners, and his habit of deferring tough decisions. The people he had his back had become a source of weakness, and their influence could no longer be tolerated. Mars, the celestial body associated with energy and assertiveness, is able to act as a catalyst, unleashing deep, hidden urges for domination and destruction. However, Scorpio, a zodiac sign known for its resilience and ability to withstand life's challenges, provides an opportunity to curb these dark impulses. If an individual refrains from participating in fateful events and does not succumb to destructive rage, defense mechanisms come into play. In dreams, there may be warnings that manifest as direct images pointing to ill-wishers in the environment or to situations where manipulation or deception is attempted. These dreams serve as a kind of navigator, helping to identify areas of life where potential threats are ripening. Particular attention should be paid to the professional sphere, relationships with relatives and previously made agreements. The individual is protected by higher powers, but only if he consciously refuses impulsive destructive actions, preferring the path of awareness. There are 5 basic demons to be rid of: excessive sympathy for traitors, obsessive desire to prove one's rightness, expectation of gratitude, insecurity, and fear of losing control of the situation. Getting rid of these negative aspects will allow Mars to direct its energy in a constructive direction. As a result, a clear strategy of action appears: confidence returns and the ability to take decisive action. The individual ceases to feel fear of open confrontation, because he knows the weaknesses of the enemy. He or she enters a predatory state, becoming tough, specific and ruthless when necessary to achieve the goal. April 25, the celestial luminary, the moon, enters the configuration of the Great Cross, passing through the 12th house, the most intimate and hidden area of the horoscope, symbolizing the inner world of man. This is the space where traumas, long-standing resentments, deep-seated fears, repressed aspirations and unfinished life episodes are carefully stored. During this period, everything that is usually subject to strict control, suddenly bursts out, as if breaking the dam. Emotions manifest themselves without any restrictions, and reactions become sharp and completely unpredictable. Dreams take on a special brightness and anxiety, creating a sense of someone's invasion of the most vulnerable place of the soul. There is an unbinding feeling as if a person is subjected to judgment, albeit not expressed aloud, and occurring in the depths of his own consciousness. Conscience begins to grate for the moments of silence, for the refusals accepted, for those who were once abandoned, or for situations where one did not have the courage to leave. Disagreements with loved ones turn into mirrors reflecting internal conflicts, attitudes ingrained from childhood, emotional wounds and mistakes, from which a person carefully turned away. That which seemed long experienced and left in the past, again arises before the eyes, but not with the purpose of destruction, but to provide a chance to complete what was started and worthy to pass through the trials. The moon in this period requires the utmost honesty with oneself. There is no more room for self-deception, although you may have to deceive others if circumstances demand it. Do not cling to an outdated role, for relationships that drain finances and vital energy, for the mask, once created for survival, but no longer reflect the true nature. The soul is not a soulless mechanism, but a source of deep feelings, requiring love and sincere respect. And here it is, the decisive moment, there is a feeling of closeness of love. Someone shows genuine interest in you, someone seeks to reduce the distance, but you remain unapproachable, not because of lack of desire, but because of the inability to fully trust, because of the ingrained habit of keeping the defense, fearing the manifestation of weakness. However, in this situation, maintaining this wall is tantamount to self-torture when your hands are reaching for life. If in existing relationships there is a sense of something new, genuine, different from the old, outdated models, where instead of discomfort and isolation there is a deep connection of souls, as if predestined by heaven, it is necessary to stop sabotage. Fate does not offer second chances. Missed love goes away not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of fear. The key to liberation is not in resistance, but in the ability to let go, to complete everything that pulls back and has no prospects. And it is at this point that the heavy cross begins its transformation, not destroying but elevating. Freed from internal obstacles, a person for the first time feels freedom from unnecessary ties, especially from outdated life scenarios. There is a rebirth of personality. The end of the moon's influence marks not destruction, but liberation. The main question is whether one is ready for takeoff or holding on to something that has long since lost its relevance. The Grand Cross does not offer compromise, but an ultimatum: either one rises to a new level or is deprived of the opportunity to complain about the lack of a chance for prosperity. Time is running out. The activity of the Grand Cross continues until April 30th, after which it will be impossible to make changes. Until this date, it is still possible to correct course, make important decisions, get out of difficult situations, stop harmful relationships, assert yourself and direct your life in the right direction. After April 30th, everything will be fixed. The choice made during this period will become a reality, an undeniable fact. Pluto exposes illusions and forces you to get rid of everything outdated. Jupiter destroys the old worldview and opens the way to a new level of influence. Mars creates provocations, but at the same time gives strength and will to act. Lunar influence can destabilize the emotional state, but at the same time it opens the veil over the depths of the subconscious, giving the opportunity to get rid of the constraining fear and open the heart to unconditional love. The planets should not be seen as hostile forces, but rather as powerful tools that can transform lives. The main question is who is in control. Do you use the energy of the planets to achieve your goals, or do you let your weaknesses become the object of their manipulation? Every person has all the necessary resources and opportunities at his or her disposal to step into a new, uncharted reality, full of bright colors and exciting prospects.